Ambassador Kethmori's crystalline form trembled as she transmitted the final plea across hyperspace toward Earth. The hegemony had already claimed 7 systems in the Outer Rim, and their biomechanical war fleets were now advancing on the peaceful worlds of the Harmony Coalition with unstoppable momentum. "Esteemed human allies," her message began, the translator struggling to convey the desperate harmonics of her native language. "The Zephyrian hegemony has broken the galactic peace accords. Their forces have overwhelmed our defensive positions at the Kepler Junction. We formally request military assistance under the Mutual Defense Treaty." She paused, her luminescent core dimming with exhaustion. The Coalition had never actually expected to invoke this clause. When humanity had joined the galactic community 23 years ago, they had been classified as a developing military power, their weapons crude by galactic standards, their ships barely capable of interstellar travel. The Mutual Defense Treaty had been more of a diplomatic courtesy than a serious military pact. "We understand if your forces are insufficient for the threat we face," Kethmori continued, trying to maintain dignity even in desperation. "Any assistance would be gratefully." The transmission was interrupted by another voice, calm and distinctly human. "Ambassador Kethmori, this is Admiral Rebecca Torres, Earth Defense Command. We've been monitoring the situation. Help is already on the way." 3 days later, Kethmori stood in the Coalition Emergency Command Center, watching the tactical displays with growing despair. The hegemony's third wave had just broken through the outer defensive perimeter at Vega Prime. Their bioships were unlike anything in the Coalition's experience, living vessels that adapted to weapons fire, growing stronger with each engagement. "Admiral," she said to her military commander, a towering Vorthark whose 6 arms managed multiple tactical interfaces simultaneously, "what's our estimated time before the hegemony reaches the core worlds?" 47 standard hours, Admiral Thexvan replied, his voice resonating through the command center like distant thunder. "Perhaps less if they maintain their current acceleration pattern." A new voice cut through the tactical chatter. "Coalition Command, this is Admiral Torres, aboard the UES Indomitable, requesting permission to enter your territorial space." Kethmori felt a surge of gratitude mixed with disappointment. One ship. Earth had sent one ship to help against an invasion fleet of thousands. "Permission granted, Admiral Torres. Be advised, the hegemony has overwhelming numerical superiority. We appreciate any assistance you can provide." Copy that, Coalition Command. Beginning transition to real space in 3, 2, 1. The tactical display suddenly erupted with new contacts. Not one ship, dozens. Then hundreds. Then thousands. "By the ancient light," whispered Admiral Thexvan, his 6 arms freezing over the control interfaces. "What is this?" The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, a wall of steel and composite armor that stretched across 3 light minutes of space. The ships were unlike anything the Coalition had seen before, angular, brutal, covered in weapon systems that registered as primitive kinetic accelerators and chemical explosive launchers. But there were so many of them. "Coalition Command," Admiral Torres's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "This is the Terra Defense Fleet, 2nd, 5th, and 7th Battle Groups. We brought friends." Kethmori's consciousness flickered with shock as the identification code streamed across her displays. The ships bore names in dozens of Earth languages: USS Gettysburg, HMS Warspite, INS Vikrant, JMSD, F Yamato, PLA Nzenghe, and hundreds more. Each vessel bristled with weapons that looked archaic compared to Coalition energy systems, but the sheer number was staggering. "Admiral Torres," Kethmori managed, "your fleet." "How many ships?" "Approximately 4,000 combat vessels, Ambassador. We may be primitive by your standards, but we make up for it in volume." The hegemony apparently agreed. Their bioships, which had been advancing with predatory confidence, suddenly slowed their approach. Their living sensors had detected the massive human fleet, and even their alien intelligence seemed to recognize the threat. The first engagement began 18 hours later as the hegemony's forward scouts probed the human formations. The coalition watched in fascination as the Deathworlders' primitive weapons tore through bioarmor that had resisted the most advanced energy weapons. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Thexvan. "Those are simple kinetic projectiles. How are they penetrating adaptive bioarmor?" Admiral Torres's response came through with what sounded like amusement. "Admiral, these creatures adapt to energy patterns and exotic matter interactions. But physics is physics. A tungsten rod, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, doesn't care how smart your armor thinks it is." The human ships fought with a coordination that defied their apparent technological limitations. They moved in perfect formations, each vessel supporting its neighbors, in complex tactical maneuvers that maximize their firepower while minimizing their exposure. When hegemony bioships attempted to adapt to human weapons, the Deathworlders simply switched ammunition types from kinetic penetrators to explosive warheads to exotic matter disruptors that their primitive technology somehow managed to produce. "They're herding the hegemony forces," realized Keth Mori as she watched the tactical display. The human fleet wasn't just fighting, they were manipulating the battle, forcing the bioships into predetermined positions. The climax came when Admiral Torres executed what would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy as the Soul Gambit. The human fleet suddenly split apart, creating what appeared to be a gap in their formation. The hegemony command ship, sensing an opportunity, led a massive charge through the opening. The trap closed with mechanical precision. Hidden human vessels emerged from the shadows of nearby asteroids, and the gap became a killing field. But the true shock came when the Deathworlders revealed their final surprise. "Coalition Command," Admiral Torres announced calmly, "you might want to clear some space in your orbital lanes. We're about to demonstrate why humans don't like to stay on just one planet." From the edges of the system, massive cylindrical objects began dropping out of hyperspace. Not ships, habitats. Rotating colonies the size of small moons, each one bristling with industrial facilities and defensive systems. And from these colonies poured forth not hundreds, but tens of thousands of smaller vessels. "Those are our civilian populations," Admiral Torres explained, as the hegemony fleet began a panicked retreat. "We've been building mobile colonies for 2 centuries. Every major population center can pack up and move if necessary. And every civilian is trained for combat occupational hazard of living on a death world." The hegemony forces, faced with what appeared to be an entire migrating civilization equipped for war, broke formation and fled toward the galactic rim. Their bioships, for all their adaptive capabilities, had never encountered an enemy that brought its entire society to war. In the aftermath, as coalition salvage crews worked to repair damaged stations and the human fleet settled into patrol formations, Keth Mori found herself aboard the Indomitable, trying to understand what she had witnessed. "Admiral Torres," she said, her crystalline form reflecting the ship's harsh lighting, "when we signed the Mutual Defense Treaty, we had no idea that humanity possessed such military capabilities." Admiral Torres smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and slightly terrifying. "Ambassador, you have to understand, for humans, mutual defense isn't just a treaty obligation. It's a promise. And we keep our promises." She gestured toward the viewports, where human ships continued their patrols among the grateful coalition vessels. "Earth might be a death world by your standards, but that just means we're very good at 2 things, surviving and protecting our friends." As Keth Mori prepared to return to coalition space, she made a mental note to recommend an immediate revision of humanity's threat classification. Developing military power was clearly no longer adequate. Apex predator species seemed more appropriate,